Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that have changed in my life as I'm working towards, again, the usual Des Moines Marathon. I try to do it every year. I've done 2 marathons in 1 year, and I really enjoyed the marathon up in Duluth. It's Grandma's Marathon, but I didn't enjoy Des Moines that year. So last year I had a little bit of trouble with my ankle, and I ended up using a different technique for the actual marathon, which is to run 2 minutes and walk 30 seconds. And it sounds a little bit strange to do that, because when I first ran out the 2 minutes, like I'm 2 minutes into a race that's going to take over 4 hours, and then I stop and start walking, and it just seems a little bit weird. I still bonked around 18, which is Des Moines Waterworks, somewhere around 18 to 20, and the big difference was that after the marathon, I felt pretty good. It still took a week to really feel better, but it was nothing like my first marathon where, although it was 20 minutes faster, it took me, probably about 6 weeks to 7 weeks to get back to where I was. And I'm just getting older, so it's just tough for me to find time. So I wanted to go over what my schedule is in terms of working out. It's really pretty simple. On Sunday, I do a long run. So last Sunday was 15 miles. And I did it at around 9:20 pace, which is a little slow. I should be doing about 9-minute pace. And then what I do is during the week, I split that up. So this Sunday, I'll run 16 miles. And then on Wednesday, I'll bike 16 miles as hard as I can. And then on Tuesday, Thursday, also bike 8 miles, half that distance. Now, I also run on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just 2 or 3 miles, just to keep the running going. But what I'm going to try to do is try to prepare for a marathon without running, and I've seen it done before, as long as you get in the long run at the end. So that's kind of my thought, and the way that I'm going to try to do it is with North Ankeny Crossfit, which, if you haven't heard of Crossfit, it's one of the high-intensity workouts. It's 45 minutes, but it's a really great group that I found, and I think that it's kind of funny. We move into our houses, we have garages, we can drive in and never talk to our neighbors. And I found that the places that I find my neighbors are actually in the local gyms. So anyway, I just highly recommend it. They're a really great group. And don't get intimidated by what you see. CrossFit Games versus CrossFit are 2 different things. What you see on Netflix and what you see those guys doing is very similar to, if you see somebody in the Olympics doing a downhill ski on a double black diamond, you don't say, well, I'm never going to ski because that looks really hard or really dangerous. It's quite the opposite, where in CrossFit, they're very good at scaling, which is making it so that you can do the exercise and eventually work up to some of the more technical stuff. So again, I'm in my second week, or finishing up my second week, really trying to understand the technical part of it. Really need to do a better job of keeping off the heavy weight, and just recognizing that, I don't really need to worry about failing right now, which is what I'm kind of used to doing. I'm used to making sure that a workout will help me fail, and so that I can grow stronger. But anyway, so let's go on to some pharmacy news for the week. So TLDR Pharmacy, still osmolarity versus osmolality. Thanks again to Brandon Dyson for passing the word on about the pharmacotherapy audiobook and audiobook codes, which we've given out all of them. We had over 350 requests for the audiobook, so I apologize to those who didn't get it. You can still get it if you go to Amazon or Audible. Find Pharmacotherapy by Eric Christensen, and you can get it free there if you've never had a book before. Eric still puts out his Real Life Pharmacology podcast. You can see that at reallifepharmacology.com, or get other materials at MedEd101. And then in terms of the Happy Farm D's blog, so those are the 3 blogs I watched: TLDR, Real Life Pharmacology, which is MedEd101.com, and then Happy PharmD had pharmacy students develop a phone app to improve adherence. I think this is really critical that I don't want to call it undergrad, but before graduation, that you start working on your side hustle or start working on some side business that you're going to do. The norm now is to not necessarily get a full-time job, but rather some kind of floating position or some kind of shift work, or maybe you'll work overnights. And we're seeing quite often that you don't necessarily get the job that you would want right out of school. So I think it's important, especially if you have the average student loans around 160,000, that you do have something that's kind of taking care of those loans. Let's see. So next week on the podcast, we'll continue the job interviews. So we had two podcast episodes on job interviews. First, Kelly Hawes from Career Staff RX just kind of talked a little bit about the job interview itself. And then we broke it down into three parts. There's the corporate culture and seeing if you're a match. And the second part will be kind of talking about your experience. But really, for many new grads, it's how do you talk about experience without having experience? And there's that catch-22 of how do you show that you have experience if you can't get the job to get the experience. And I know that Walgreens now is limiting some stores to somebody that only has a year or more of retail experience. So that would cut out residents who worked at a hospital. That would cut out students who don't have that experience coming out of school. So really critical to know how you articulate the experiences that you did have, and APPEs don't count as experience apparently. And then the last one is going to be pharmacy specific. So whatever job you're looking for, if you're going to long-term care, you should know a lot about long-term care. But also start thinking maybe about, and this is why I think the pharmacotherapy book took off, is start thinking about that BCPS or some of those certifications that you would expect to have down the road, and articulate how that's important to what your journey is going to be. But that's what's going to be on the Pharmacy Leaders podcast this Monday and Wednesday. And then after that, we'll hear from my current APPE student, Allison Russell from the University of Iowa. She's got a great interview with a fellow classmate, and then I will interview her as well. The Mothership had quite a few episodes this week. I want to say there's at least one a day. So executive leadership interview with J.M. Smith on Monday, then Income Outcomes Show talked a little bit about debt reduction, getting a debt reduction plan, and kind of understanding that a little bit. Then PGX with host Ken Sternfeld. He's big into pharmacogenomics. We've heard him quite a bit. I want to say it's been almost every week. Matt Paterini, the non-traditional pharmacist, always interviewing those people that have those kind of out-of-the-box jobs, like Dr. Anthony Boyd at Cleveland Clinic, and they were playing on The Ohio State University and The Cleveland Clinic, and then medical cannabis dispensary. So a lot going on the pharmacy podcast this week as well. Your financial pharmacist, they have a rapid-fire insurance Q&A, but I actually went all the way back to episode 10. My wife and I were looking for life insurance, kind of figuring out if we have too much, too little, and found out that we actually have too much because our financial situation has improved quite a bit, stock market, housing, and all of that. So maybe pay a little bit less each month now. And then their last one was, again, talking to Brianne Porter, who talks about the lessons that she had in going through pharmacy school, but then PGY1, PGY2, and fellowship, and finding herself in tremendous debt after those 3 years. Okay. Talk to Your Pharmacist podcast. I think the most recent one was still from the July 30th, staying current with new models of care in pharmacy with Vice President of Professional Affairs at APHA, Ann Burns. And then on to YouTube. The only new thing I saw was the live stream from Kevin Yee, and I didn't see anything new from Brian Fung or Paul Tran. And Paul Tran had the Amazon pharmacist on. If you haven't checked that out, that one's pretty cool. RX Radio, going back to the podcast a little bit, had a couple of cool new episodes, especially the one with he and I believe his fiance, Dr. Richard Waith, and his fiance talk a little bit about pharmacy. And then I mentioned before that there was another one about, I want to say it's it's like Core Competencies RX or something like that. Kind of doing those soft skills, helping those new technicians, new pharmacists achieve those core competencies. Then Tyler Dalton, if you had trouble with the NAPLEX and you're part of that group, usually every year about 1 in 5 don't meet the standard. He's got a great video on how to study for the NAPLEX. There's 7,000 views. And I think you just I think he's just got Tyler Dalton and then maybe pharmacist or Auburn to make sure you get him. That's where he went to school. But someone else on YouTube who is a pharmacist, and now that I'm doing CrossFit, all of a sudden Olympic lifting is in my life. I check out Kelsey Douglas. She's really done a great job of kind of following her own career with powerlifting, with diet, and kind of showing how she does everything. So a really good how-to. She's got about as many subscribers as me, around 11,000 or 12,000 or something like that. And I think I really like the ones where she kind of talks about how she's not motivated to get in and ends up getting in the gym. She talks a bit about her new position as a pharmacy manager. It was about 6 months ago or so. So definitely check out Kelsey Douglas, pharmacist. She says The Life of a Fit Pharmacist, which is a little different, I think, than Adam Martin, the Fit Pharmacist. So anyway, I will talk to you guys next week. Definitely check out the episodes on Monday and Wednesday, especially if you're job hunting or if you know somebody who's looking for a pharmacy job. It's getting quite a bit tougher, I hear, out there to get the positions. But if you do get to the interview, you want to make sure that you do the best you can.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.